The definition for biological agents cited in this act is as follows. Biological agents refer to any microorganism, any infectious substance, or any component of microorganism or an infectious substance that is capable of causing death, disease, or other biological malfunction in a human being. Okay, this is indeed a very wide scope, and many of the common disease which we know, the flu, okay, normal fever, okay, well, can be regarded as one. So what makes it so special then? Well, there are simply thousands and thousands of biological agents, some known and watched out for, while others yet to be discovered. In this slide, we showcase 4 different biological agents of concern. Well, from the top left, you'll see there's anthrax, the famous 2001 Ameritrax or white powder incident, where key figures in the US were sent letters containing anthrax in attempt to kill them. To the right of it, botulism, one of the deadliest poison known to man. Remember in health education class while you were in primary school, where you were told not to eat from food from dented cans? Well, that is botulism toxin in play. There's also plague and HO disease, which is still in existence today. And you will also notice COVID-19 also made it in the list. Well, this was added into BARTA early last year. How were these selected? Well, it all boils down to 2 main criterion. How severe is the disease to an individual, meaning how deadly it is, and if it has the potential to be weaponized. As with every CBRNE material, biological agents have their own characteristic challenges. First things first, biological agents can reproduce itself in suitable conditions. Well, they are called pathogens. So what do you think is a suitable condition for pathogens to reproduce? Well, us, human beings, are the suitable hosts for pathogens. Why do you think these pathogens you saw earlier have the potential to be weaponized? Now that we understand this, you also need to understand that very small amounts of these pathogens can be very deadly. Just a couple of these pathogens floating in the air can infect us, causing us to be sick. Naturally, it takes time for these small amounts of pathogen to reproduce themselves, for them to take over our bodies. The period of time by which the agent enters the body to when the person starts displaying symptoms of being ill, this is called the incubation time. Earlier, I've shown you the 4, and these are the 4 once again. This table summarizes the different characteristics of the different biological agents shared earlier. You'll notice there are similarities and yet also differences amongst them. All of these are the variables of biological agents from detection to investigation. You'll notice, for example, the incubation period for anthrax is typically 1 to 7 days, although up to 60 days possible. Why? Well, that's the way God has created biological agent, has created anthrax. Compared to plague, well, for bites, if you got bitten by a rat with the plague bacteria, you can see effects from 2 to 6 days very quickly. Compared to inhalation, if somebody has gotten plague and it has become pneumonic plague where he starts breathing out the bacteria, inhalation is 1 to 3 days. So we see variants like that. And yet for transmission wise, you can see certain illnesses are non-person to person transmissible, while others are, for example, COVID is person to person transmissible. So these are factors which scientists have to consider before we can implement SOPs to guide the general public, or how can we protect ourselves against whatever agent we may be facing at that point of time. Next, we've got routes of entry. How does the biological agent enter your body? Well, there are 3 main ways on how biological agents can enter our bodies. The first one is through inhalation of respiratory droplets or bioaerosols. The second, ingestion, meaning swallowing it, eating it, lending our saliva and swallowing our saliva of biological contaminated food or water. And thirdly, contact with infected humans or animals. Well, the use of face masks address to the inhalation and some of the contact routes. For example, through the absorption via the eyes and mouth. while food security prevents ingestion of biological agents. Finally, the use of disinfectant and the reminders to wash our hands and not to touch our faces, eyes, mouth help guard against contact exposure. Ever wondered why the COVID-19 stay-home notice duration is 14 days? Quite simply, the incubation period for COVID-19 virus is 14 days. If you do not exhibit any symptoms by then, you should be safe. This is a calculated risk, all right? And what else? Checking for fever and flu-like symptoms is currently the most immediate method of spotting someone potentially down with COVID-19. It is not accurate. Why? Many illnesses also induce fevers. But this is indeed very useful when screening large groups of people, like in the shopping malls, in public places. So then when these people have these symptoms, other confirmatory tests, which are more accurate, will be conducted. Back to detecting very small amounts of pathogens. Have you ever watched a movie where a character is seen using a handheld biological detector, trying to find something, and then the detector suddenly sounds, and then the person shouts, "Oh, anthrax, anthrax, run for your life." Unfortunately, I need to tell you, there is no such detector for biological material. Due to the two facts that very small amounts of pathogen is all it takes to make you sick, and that they are usually suspended in the air around us, current handheld detector technology is unable to detect such small amounts with a press of a button. Thus, sampling for COVID-19 from the air is not yet a viable solution, and we need to collect physical samples. Well, when a person is confirmed to be down with COVID-19, he will be isolated. What does that mean? It means we keep him away from others and we monitor him. There is no medicine for viruses, and the body needs to fight the virus on its own. The only thing we can do is to monitor and stabilize the patient to prevent death. So here are some tips for preventing transmission of COVID-19. We want to avoid touching our face. Why? Quite simply, our eyes, nose, mouth are avenues for the virus to enter our body. Wash your hands with soap and water frequently. Use hand sanitizers when soap and water are not available, just in case you come in contact with the virus and accidentally introduce it into your body. You want to disinfect frequently touch areas such as doorknobs, door handles, tables to prevent cross-contamination. We also want to cover our mouths when coughing or sneezing, especially even when wearing a mask. Avoid crowds and maintain social distancing. Well, this is to be socially responsible too. In a gist, now that we have learned a bit more about the virus, we can apply common sense to what we do. Well, there are different types of face masks available in the market, and I've been asked time and time again which is better, which is not good, etc. So I'll just share with you some of the variants. Well, the first things first is the non-water resistant disposable surgical mask. This is designed to be free size. Well, it's mainly designed to be cheap, not a bad mask to use for biological. Next, we've got the water resistant disposable surgical mask. Highly recommended. It's also free size. The blue color reflects its water resistance. Again, water resistance and not waterproof. It's water resistant. Next, we've got the non-water resistant disposable N95 mask, also recommended. Well, what's the difference between this and the surgical mask is that it's got a form fitting, okay, for the face, and because it's form fitting, it comes with different sizes. So that's something you have to keep note of. For the current COVID-19 situation where there is a shortage of masks, it's preferable for you guys to actually save this for first responders and medical workers. We've also got the water-resistant and disposable N95 mask, form-fitting functions with small, medium, large, extra large as well, blue color to reflect its water resistance. Again, try to save this for first responders if you do not have already. Well, this next mask is, well, it's a bit dicey if you ask me. This is a mask with an outlet valve circled in red. Well, this mask itself, if you ask me, it's not a bad mask to use. However, I would not recommend this, because what this mask is after all a mask with a valve. Okay, for people who find it difficult to exhale, there's a rubber valve over there which opens, which makes exhaling a bit easier. That being said, I do not really recommend this, only because when you exhale, the valves open and that could expose whatever bioaerosols you might breathe out. So if possible, I would encourage you to not use this mask, but use something else instead. For the next mask, we've got the standard issued reusable mask, reusable face mask. Well, this is similar to surgical mask, but reusable. Those with replaceable filters add to safety, be it from inhaling or exhaling. Replaceable filters can offer more consistent protection, especially if the mask is washed frequently, because especially for cloth mask, if you wash it often, the fibers actually break down. Well, it can also be more difficult to breathe it if the mask or the filter isn't designed correctly. And finally, we've got the face shield, recommended under special circumstances. For example, well, the thing is, it has got a lower protection factor compared to the rest. Okay, when used without face mask, the most ideal is when you use a face shield, use a face mask still, but acceptable for the following groups of people due to needs. For example, children who cannot find suitably sized masks or have trouble keeping the mask on their face, persons with health conditions which make wearing of mask unsuitable, maybe if the person has weak lungs, people who are speaking in groups of people in a classroom or lecture, they will already be in a distance from the crowd, and wearing a mask will hinder their speech. So most of these past few slides I've explained to you is mainly slanted towards COVID-19. However, it also applies a lot to the pathogens. Of course, modifications need to be made when you talk about the other pathogens in terms of the processes, the instruments, but it's all about there. So you generally get a gist of biological.